So, Danielle,
hmm
you realize I am the Mary Poppins for the 21st century.
I love
I
that.
am the red-pilled Mary Poppins.
You are so red pilled.
Because if Mary Poppins flew into the 21st century and took that red pill from the Matrix movie where the guy wakes up
hmm
and realizes, oh my gosh, it sucks. This really is bad news. And I better do something about it. There's a
hmm
way out, but it's really bad and I can't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
If she took that red pill, she would use her spoonful of sugar to write these books. But since
That
she
is
wasn't
amazing.
available, I had to
Yeah.
do it.
Welcome, everyone, to For the Love of Freedom, and a special welcome to VOP USA radio listeners from around the world. Thank you all for joining us today. This is a new weekly show I started. We're about 5 episodes in because I wanted to dig deeper into the personal stories behind so many of the guests that we've had on the State of Freedom podcast. But because of the pressing policy issues we discuss, we haven't always had the time and space to do that. So, For the Love of Freedom is my answer to that. It's a new space where I get to have coffee table style discussions that really allow us to get to know the person and the life stories behind the incredible people who are bringing freedom to the world. So, joining me today is someone who just oozes inspiration and catches you up in it. You will want to share this episode with everyone you know who is a parent of young children. Julie Lavender Le Doux is an artist, a jazz musician, and an author. She's written an exceptionally compelling book series for children aged 10 to 14 called the Amazing Series. And she takes on some very tough topics in a really beautifully approachable and imagination stirring way. Julie, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, and thank you for that well-constructed introduction.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Thank you for joining me. You must be a night owl that you're able to join me so late from where you are.
Well, I'm overseas right now, and I will make time to talk about these things anytime. I've done middle of the night stuff before, and when you have a really important message to get out, you got to get out of bed to do it.
You do. You do. Well, thank you for getting out of bed to do it. And I love to start every episode with a scripture. And the one that I pulled for today is Proverbs chapter 10, verses 20 to 21. And it says, "The teachings of the godly ones are like pure silver, bringing words of redemption to others. But the heart of the wicked is corrupt. The lovers of God feed many with their teachings, but the foolish ones starve themselves for a lack of an understanding heart." And I thought that really captured the heart and direction of your books. And you are an author, you're an artist, you're a musician, but to me, you're also really a teacher at heart. And I saw that firsthand when I met you at an event in Nashville a number of years ago, at the beginning of my awakening. And you gave a talk on fear there that
Mm-hmm.
really impacted me because at that time, you may not know this actually, at that time I was working for Pfizer headquarters, the belly of the beast itself. And I had a lot of fear. I had fear of leaving corporate America. I had fear of, look, mom, no hands, because I had a very niche skill set. And so the Lord used your talk and the book that you shared with us. Then I read that book to kind of help me along that path. And a few years later, I started podcasting. So I make that connection to you. So thank you for being such a great teacher.
Wow, well, that means the world to me because that is underlying all that I do. That theme of overcoming fear is central. When you say the book, do you talking about the book, The Fear is the Key? Yeah, Yeah, you got to go back now on now and give me a better review because I like got one review for
I
one
can't
star.
even find it. I was trying to find it today. I had to go back on my Kindle to get it. I
It's
couldn't
on,
find it.
it's not as available on, it is on it's on Barnes and Noble and some of the other,
Okay.
platforms. For some reason, I'm not sure how accessible it is on Amazon, but somebody left me one dang star. But you know
No,
what?
I'll go give you 5 stars.
They must have been so non-fearful that they didn't need me.
Or they just were afraid to leave a better review. I don't know. They just they didn't read it.
Well, it's funny that you bring all that up because one of the things that I learned is that if you want to know what you were created to do, and this is, look, my book is short and it's it's punctilious. I
Yeah,
don't know if that's the right word. It's beefy, it's nuggety, and it gives you the distilling down what took me probably 25 years to learn. But one of the key things is that if you want to know why you were created and what you need to do, you need to go deeply and directly into what you're the most afraid of because it's buried there. And if you want to know what you must do, you have to go find out where the enemy decided to take you out and in what ways he did it. And how, because they're divinely designed darts of destruction,
yeah.
devastatingly directed at your destiny. That was a lot of D's.
It was, but it was excellent.
Can you tell I love alliteration? When we get more into the books, you'll see how much I love alliteration just by the titles. But yeah, so that means a lot to me because really, and I heard somebody say something about fear that turned my head again. Is that, of all the things God really tells you, don't break this commandment, when he says don't be afraid, we sort of see it in terms of comfort, like,
Hmm.
oh, let me comfort you, don't be afraid. And the way somebody said it recently, it was like, dude, dude, no, I'm commanding you. You cannot live out of a state of fear. That's an order.
It's true. And I've heard people say it like fear is not an emotion, fear is a spirit.
That's
So
true.
it's like agreeing with a spirit. It's less than a valid emotion.
Absolutely. It's a force. It's an intelligence. It's it's uh, it's a devastating um, um, directional weapon,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, when you feel afraid, it's such a visceral experience. It's hard to keep your wits about you to understand what's happening. So I'm not everything I'm doing right now, including the kids' books, is I never would have done. I mean, first of all, I've done everything I do afraid, even if afraid, I do it
Yeah.
anyway. But I never would have gotten to this point if if the Lord hadn't spoken to me and said to me, "It's time. You can't do this anymore. You can't hide in avoidance anymore." And
Dig into that a little bit if you would.
yeah, well, one of the things I learned is that if you have core competencies that allow you to artfully avoid dealing with things, and that's called avoidance. And avoidance actually increases the role of anxiety in your life because you'll go through an anxiety loop when you're about to take something on you need to face and it terrifies you. So you back off, you get a hit of relief and a euphoria from not doing it. And then, and you think, "Whew, that was the right thing to do. I never should have faced that scary thing." And then what happens is it gets buried deeper within your non-conscious mind and comes up in greater anxiousness. So it really boomerangs back on you. But one of the things people often do is hide within core competences that are easier and not threatening. So you'll get all day long and twice on Sundays, everyone, giving you applause for doing all the things that keep you busy and keep people happy and keep the trains running on time, but aren't the thing you need to do. But we tend to make other people happier and better organized and all kinds of things. Or sometimes it can be really destructive what we do too to avoid. But usually people don't want you to stop doing the things.
It's true. In fact, the Lord was talking to me about that either this week or last week. It's kind of all blurs together. But this idea of you need to be where I call you to be, and you need to be okay with other people being unhappy about that.
That's a mouthful. No,
Yeah.
that's really true. And especially if your avoidance takes the form of staying in codependent or dysfunctional relationships. People really don't like it when you stop doing the dance, and then they're like, wait a minute, she always steps left right now, and she's not doing it, and it's messed up the whole system we've got. But, to really kind of encapsulate one of the things that was the most important to me was when the Lord said to me, you learned to be afraid. You can learn to be free. You can learn to feel safe, in essence. Because what we think is, we don't come out, honestly, we don't come hardwired for fear.
Yeah.
We come hardwired for love and hunger and we are hardwired for our bodies know how to protect us. So if they sense danger, they will go into different mechanisms to keep us, physically able to protect ourselves as best we can. But we really don't come out just hardwired, afraid and terrified. We don't.
You're so right.
We learn that. We learn to be afraid. We learn we're not safe. We learn we might not be loved. We learn these things. And if fear is learned, think about it, through something big or a series of small paper cuts over time based on a repeating situation, if learning to be afraid and then your body learns to believe, your body just believes that you believe. So when all the fight or flight things happen and the clammy hands and the shakes and the panicky things, that's just because your body was triggered by something you think. I thought that, I believed that, it's here somewhere, and my body is like, whoa, whoa, that could kill you, that could kill you, that could kill you. Maybe a rubber snake, but if you think it's not, think it could kill you. Your body's going to react
Yeah.
in full on fight or flight, terror, the whole deal to get you out of there. So if you learned to be afraid or just deeply chronically anxious, which is, another, it's just that's fear, then you can really learn a different way of being. And that encouraged me so much because usually we just think we're a victim of fear. I was
Yeah.
just minding my own business and then I was afraid. And it just seems to come out of nowhere. So it's so completely, global to us. It's owning us. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden I was afraid or, but it really isn't like that. It really comes, I mean, obviously if somebody jumps up behind you or something like that, right? But in terms of our relationships and our life experiences, it's really, it's really, our, it's really what's going on in here.
Yeah. So, what have you done? Do you speak the truth? Do you look it in the face and say, okay, this is what I'm reacting in fear to, but the truth is I'm loved. The truth is I am capable, or whatever the answer is to the fear. Is that a one of the ways you might coach people to get over it?
Yeah, what I've learned is that since we're multidimensional beings, body, soul, and spirit, you really need to do you need to approach it all three ways, right? And so you really need to have healing of traumatic memories, and Dave Hayes' book,
Yeah.
is awesome. And then Sozo Ministry, stuff like that, where you
Hmm.
actually get emotionally healed from triggering memories is key. Um, uh, Absolutely brain retraining stuff, um, going out on purpose to do things on a regular basis that make you afraid is really important. When I had my daily podcast on fear-free living, I ended every one with the words, now go do something that scares you.
Mm, I love
You
that.
know, like make a habit every day. Now it's funny because now that I've come, you'll actually come to the point where it gets real quiet and not so many things do. But I was saying that during COVID, and I wouldn't wear a mask. So,
Good for
I
you.
mean, there were a few times here and there, but um, so I had to make myself leave the house. I didn't want to leave the house. And but anyway, yeah, I mean, you learn to see doing something that makes you uncomfortable and scared as key to the process of your well-being. And so, yeah, it's a big, long story. But I mean, if people are interested, I think I sum it up the best in the shortest amount of time, or at least get people to want to take the journey because you have to just decide you're not going to live like this anymore.
Yeah.
You're fed
Yeah.
up and you're not going to take it anymore. So I wrote this little book called Fear is the Key. And I think it says a lot. And it's
We'll put
a
links to
Kindle
it.
version, only Kindle versions out there on Barnes and Noble or I think Amazon. But
I'll get the link and put it in the show notes for people. Now, maybe that'll take us over to the topic of your books. So, you have such a strong value for courage. How did that translate into equipping parents to be brave in the way that they raise their kids? Because I find that comes through. I've read the first book, Constance and the Battle for Wonder. And it's been a little while, so the memory's a little fuzzy on it, but that comes through.
well, I set out to write one kind of book and wound up writing a book series that by the time we're done with book five, I'm taking on the World Economic Forum. So started with one girl trying to figure out her life. And the next thing you know, I am telling the truth story of what happened to us in the 21st century. And this is the amazing thing that happens when you're committed to being a courageous person, which doesn't mean you don't feel afraid. It just means that you don't allow a fear state to control you. Don't be afraid, which means to give yourself over to the fear state. So, so I wrote a original kind of story, world building thing along a while back, and a guy read it. He said, you really got something here, but you need to write a series and you need to write down for younger kids. So these books are for kids 10 to 14, and kids love to read in series. So he said, you really need to think about where this family could go if you wrote a series. So it starts out the Amazings series.
There we go.
Um,
I'll keep it
there,
up there for a little
Great,
while.
thank you. Starts out with a story of one family in an entirely colorblind town called Greystone Heights, um, and they are the only family that can see color. Everyone else has lost the ability to see color because they conform to something called the prescribed order. But the Falsum family can see color because they interact with the supernatural realm called wonder, and so they won't conform because they don't want to live in the gray. And they don't really totally understand what this realm of wonder is. They don't get it. It unfolds over the series. But all they know is it's real. All they know is they can think and they can see and they don't want, and they can see what's happening around them. And there's something wrong with what's happening around them. And they're figuring it out. And it starts when their daughter wants to go to school with all the other kids at the grown-up factory because she thinks it's kind of cool. Mom, I got all that wonder stuff, but the gray seems so sophisticated, and so they're not sure, but they let her go, and we're off to the races because at this point the family doesn't realize that the shadowy elders of the order behind the scenes now think they have a chance to get control of the one family that stands in the way of their total domination of the entire town, the one non-conforming family. And of course, we can't have any non-conforming families, can we?
No.
And so they want to use her daughter through the education system and through the grown-up factory and use that system to get a hold of her and eventually her family. And along the way, she learns about betrayal and friendships and pressures and trust, and she needs to own her own choice. Will she fight for wonder, or will she conform? Is the gray side the same as the bright side? Is it all the same? You know, because the elders are telling everybody there's nothing supernatural out there. You need us. You need the order. Just like totalitarian governments take away God and then they can substitute their control.
Yeah.
Communism, etc. No atheism, therefore you need us, right? And so it was just an interesting story I was passionate about because having homeschooled our kids and stuff, I really did think deeply about structures of control and thriving versus uh, you know, what was being served up in the establishment education around me, essentially, and what we could do and why would we want to do it differently. But I'll tell you what, it grew because then, as I began to write, then I began in book two, I began to take on the abuse of science. And what happens if at the school science fair they decide to control all the questions the kids can ask so they can control the answers they come up with, to reaffirm that there's no meaning and purpose, there's no mystery in the universe, there's no design, no intelligence. This is why you need the order.
It's
And
incredible. I
right,
mean, what an amazing analogy, really, for the awakening process too. It it's I feel like I've gone through that process, like you go to well, I was leaving the grown-up factory and try and having to wake up to all of these realities that we're unfortunately faced with, that are, I don't know, that have just been kind of hidden beneath the surface, or really hidden in plain sight.
right. And in this book, of course, they can't stand anyone who connects to wonder. And they know color is, if you can start to see color, you're not far from wonder. So we have to keep reinforcing the gray, and we have to keep controlling the systems of thought and, again, science, relationships, pressure, community in book two. And but it goes very sideways because Constance is the main character. She sort of drives the story forward. But in my family, I have a beautiful, intact family, mom and dad and four kids. And Constance is the oldest daughter, but then she has three incredible brothers that are foils, that have these wild personalities and they all interact. And in book two, her crazy brother Chance, who blows things up just to see how they work. He can't stand the manipulation at the science fair. And he says, they're lying to you. I know there's geniosity behind the all of it all, because I've been to Wonder and I saw how it started. And he busts into the school science fair and sets off a supernatural science fair project, and it goes very wrong.
That's
What
awesome.
could go wrong? And then along the way, Constance is dealing with bitterness and unforgiveness from her broken heart, from relationship in the school, and all these things are happening, and and the family's trying to, and they're starting to realize there's more going on behind the scenes than just another way to educate your kids. And so by book three, when other people in the town, this is where it really gets dicey, and this is a book I was writing in 2020. By book three, other people in town, reasons I won't tell you, spoiler alert, they start to see dashes of color. So people are asking questions, and they're starting to choose to wear colorful outfits, and something's coming alive. And Constance is so excited this is happening at her school. But guess what the elders of the orders say? They say, oh my gosh, we can't have this
Oh, no.
because we'll lose control of these people. And so, but we can't tell them they haven't seen what they've seen. We'll just tell them what it means. So this is a book about propaganda. And so they tell everyone um, that the reason why they're seeing color is because they've been exposed to a plague, and that color could kill you. And so you need to wear gray glasses on your face at all times to protect you from this plague. And so Constance, even though she's been raised with this family, is completely inundated. Everywhere she goes, color could kill you, color could kill you. The authorities have the answer. There's an authorized ideas manager who's in charge of making sure that all TV and radio and newspapers and stuff all tell everybody, the world, the whole, their world, that this is terrifying, and they need to conform. And Constance comes home and now she doesn't trust her family anymore.
That's
They
tough.
were they were so close, and she knew wonder was a thing. And now she's instantly, almost overnight, by the massive rollout of propaganda, can't find her bearings. And now she's terrified of the color that was her life before. Is this not what we've all been through?
It is. I have to think it was pretty cathartic to write.
It was terrifying. Are you kidding me? You talk about being scared. Because I honestly, it was hard to go to the page to write because I don't write with an outline. I get titles and I get some ideas and then we see what happens. And I honestly didn't, so I have to tell you the titles of the books because you'll
Yeah.
like those. But
Here,
I
I'll put them
honestly
back up.
didn't know if my people would be okay. This is 2020. I'm shocked that churches are letting people call them non-essential.
So you
I,
were writing it in 2020. You
I
weren't
was
doing
writing,
this
okay,
like
let me tell
right
you.
now.
So the first book is Constance and the Battle for Wonder. That's when she first goes off to the grown-up factory to see what's happening, how the other half lives. And we start to find out about the elders of the order and what their interests are and why the Falsums love color and why other people don't and what conformity looks like, what, and as opposed to conviction and free, really serious thinking, free thinking. So that's Constance in the Battle for Wonder. Will Constance fight for wonder, or will she just conform? Will she just, do what everyone else is doing? Constance and Chance, the crazy brother, and the Big Bang Backlash. This one goes deeply, deeply into origins in a really super fun way with some beefy science taught through the school science fair and how Chance is just determined that everyone understands the geniosity behind the all of it all. And I've been to Wonder, I've got a science project from Wonder, and I have to show everyone exactly why I know there's genius in our universe, our cosmos. And so that's Constance and Chance and the Big Bang Backlash. Remember I told you I like alliteration.
Yeah.
Well, this book, Constance and Charleston, her nerdy brother, who reads the dictionary just for fun. The book in that third cover is a dictionary because this kid understands that words control the world. And if you can control the words, you can control people. So he begins to unpack how words are used truthfully or artfully or craftily or trickily, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Trickishly. Anyway, so that book is called Constance and Charleston and the Bombastic Baffle Gab, which are two really fun words that literally mean propaganda.
Wow.
And um, so this book is about how propaganda works. And what happens is the kids in my books teach each other. They'll learn things, they'll come home, they'll go, wow, well, what was that? What did you think about that? Charleston will be reading the dictionary. Wow, can you check this out? Or look what I just learned. When she comes home terrified that a black hole plague leaked out of a black hole, and a symptom of it is seeing color, so you have to wear dangerous to see color, it could get to you. He's like, you're kidding me, Rand. Let's research this. So he researches it. And now he's really mad. He's mad that they're lying to everybody in town. So he starts his own newspaper in book 3 to tell the truth about what's happening. Well, what could go wrong when you start your own newspaper and begin to ask questions when the elders of the order control everything and they don't want you doing that? Imagine what could happen to you and your family and that
Yeah.
we've all been through, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so it was hard to write because I didn't, I gotta, I'm going this by going, well, this is a really fun idea. And my son, Jean-Marc, helped me kind of flesh out this idea about color and gray glasses and all this stuff, and how they would position color as you know dangerous.
Yeah.
What's the word when you can catch something?
Contagious.
Thank you. And so uh, we're, we're living through this, and again, I'm watching people around me that they're saying things like, "Well, I went to the store today and I stayed 6 feet away from someone else." I'm like,
Yeah.
or, "Well, our churches, we care so much, we closed our doors," or, "Jesus would want you to wear a mask," or, you know, people out on the road, somebody wearing a mask in a car, and I was like, Jesus, this is, I mean, literally, Jesus, this is America. What
Yeah.
happened to you people?
Yeah.
And what happened to Christians? What
Yeah.
happened to you? Greater is he that is in me. What? I mean, right. It was just so evil and shocking to
Yeah.
see who was willing to just give up everything, and then to watch who was being canceled and shut down and marginalized, and seeing not only would people be afraid, they would hate you for not being afraid.
Yeah.
Like, wait
Yeah.
a minute, you changed the definition of vaccinations, and then you're going to go get one to protect you, but you're afraid of me because
I know.
I thought you had one that
I
was
know.
supposed to protect you from this. So we have to change the definition of a vaccine, which I guess everybody in the world has to take all the same stuff at the same time, or we could all die.
And Julie, I worked at Pfizer during COVID, right?
What?
Yeah, and it was astounding. So there's a woman in my chain of command, like up above me, and we had become friendly before she kind of got a bigger job. And she called me. Well, I was refusing the vax, refusing. Early on, she told me, she was like, "If we're doing this as Pfizer, there's absolutely no chance I will ever take that vaccine because no vaccines are created that quickly, right?" So clock that. I was in my apartment in New York. That had to be February, March. Okay, so it would have been March, April, May of 2020. Fast forward to after, once these things start rolling out, and here I am refusing, and she's like, "Yeah, but you're not going to get a promotion." And, what are you talking about? Of course I'm getting it. Of course I'm giving it to my child. And I'm like, these people drank their own Kool-Aid. They knew. They knew. It was even more astounding for me in that environment, I think, because it was just like, y'all know the rules. Y'all literally know the rules, and you know that the rules are not suddenly the same as they always have been. So why can you be so comfortable
It was
doing this?
astounding to wake up in the midst of mass psychosis
Yeah.
and people that should know better or think better, or I don't know, but I'm writing this books, and I'm going, how do you have to give children a happy ending? I mean, I never write the happy, slappy, easy peasy things because the world isn't like that.
Yeah.
And if your fiction, if your fairy stories can't live up to the ghouls out there, they're not big enough because classic fairy tales handled very evil things,
Yeah.
topics. So we have to be able to write books that can hold up to this, what we're facing, or it's just not fair to kids not to give them a narrative to live out of that can handle it. And so I didn't know how to write, but I did keep writing, and then eventually I wrote about something that it was super super redemptive. You talked about words of silver. Well, silver in the Bible is associated with redemption,
Yeah.
and so I really seek to have that redemption in what I write, and and I prayed, and God helped me, and I'm surprised. I'm amazed when all I've got is a title in a bad situation. How are we gonna get out of this? Well, then what's interesting it was that I couldn't stop there because I was commenting a lot on the fear, the propaganda, the use of media, the abuse of media, the gray glasses, the things on the face, and all that. And guess what? In book 3, I even have a character named Karen, and she's a little
So
girl
many
who
Karens.
well, she's a little girl who wears 2 pairs of gray glasses on her face at all times just to keep herself, and she rats on others.
That's
Anyway,
amazing.
uh, but it didn't stop there because then when they started, jabbing and punishing people, and then you heard the rhetoric about how we should all be put away because we're not doing the getting our jabs.
Right.
And they and the yelling and screaming at what they hoped would happen to us for not obeying, that we should be punished. And then you could see the places where they were locking people up in Australia in those little
Yeah.
cubicles and stuff. And then people would say, "Well, I just want you to know I self-quarantined. I came home from Walmart and quarantined for a week." you know, whatever. I'm like, you're kidding me.
I
So
know.
in book 4, which is Constance and Chief, her littlest brother, and the blind spot blunder, um, they roll out something called safety drops for the kids' eye, for everybody's eyes, you see, because the gray glasses won't keep you safe enough, from the color demons and
Wow.
the color dangers. So we have to make you permanently colorblind. So you'll really be safe. You'll never see color ever again. And think about it. That is when you go so far into the brainwashing, you won't come back. You could be presented with all of the information, and this is what we're seeing in the LGBTQ world. Parents have overseen the castration of their children,
Yeah, it's
will
true.
spend the rest of their lives, if they don't receive grace, will spend the rest of their lives over the hill on the opposite side of reality to
Hmm.
protect the choices they've made.
Yeah.
And this is what happens if you say, I'm willing to be made permanently colorblind so that I'll be permanently safe. And we can just never, do you see how? And so this metaphor of color and color blindness and safety drops, you know, it just says it all. And I never have to re-traumatize a kid when they read my story because it's in enough of a fantasy. They can go, wow, that was dumb. And then they go, wait, that's kind of what we went through. Mom, that's what we went through. And and I've had kids say that, Mom, isn't that what we went through? But what in my books, there's a problem. What if some people who take the safety drops wind up blind? What happens? Is this not what we're living through right now? And then that book is called She. I don't. It's not in print yet because all of your viewers have to buy many, many copies of my current 3 books
All
so I can
right. Look,
afford.
let me put up the link to that as well.
I only need about 15 grand, people, and then I can print books 4 and 5. Okay.
Beautiful.
Okay. So, um, um, b- and I have all my books, by the way, printed in India because China's a different thing, right? They steal your intellectual property. They're beautifully magazine quality, archival paper, beautiful, matte covers, 20 full color illustrations in every book. Chapter books are not like this because they're usually newsprint, black and white, but I can't tell kids that color is a metaphor for revelation and truth and give them black and white books. I
No.
can't. So color has to be, the whole experience has to be so rich for the people who read them, including adults love these because they're really healing. The more you read, because I go deeper into these themes, right? I'm telling it like it is, right? And so book 4, what do you do? And what if my family's affected in the book very personally by these safety drops? Again, it's very personal to us. Then by book 5, uh, which is ends the first 5 books in this. There'll be 10 ultimately. Then we'll go into the YA, the young adult thing. But book 5 is called Constance and Cornelius, which is the family dog, and the Balam Bang Jang Boomerang.
What does that mean?
Well, believe it or not, it is the real terminology from like 18th century sailors' language of a paradise. And what could be or a perfect world, a new world order? What could happen
Oh,
if we decide to do what they tell us to do so we could all have, a great reordering?
wow.
Because there's the order, and then we got to have the great reordering. And we got to have, we got to even everything out and let the smart people tell us out of our 15-minute cities and all the things so we can just
Yeah.
all be good. And so in my in this book I take on the World Economic Forum. And it's hilarious because tyrannists are hilarious. I mean, their ideas are so stupid that you got to have some fun. Come on, you're okay. We're staring down a global depopulation agenda. Who
Yeah.
doesn't find that funny?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm a little cracked on this. You got to, I mean, seriously, because really, if Jesus, the Lord says in, Psalm, it says the Lord sits in heaven and he laughs at his enemies. Well, if he's got a good sense of humor about all this, I figured I could get one.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
but see, the point is that somebody has got to tell the truth story of what is happening to us in the 21st century to children. We cannot memory hold this. My books are essentially history and prophecy because I'm telling the truth about what happened. But I never do it in a way that will doom or terrify children. But do you honestly think, I mean, apart from God, and God's a big factor here, we're going to survive if we don't have people who understand, if we don't tell the next generation the truth of what these ghouls want to do and how they
Exactly.
work and how they operate? And if you can use metaphors and imagery instead of beating us up, with a documentary format about how it all sucked
Yeah.
or could,
And interview 900 traumatized individuals.
right. Why, I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. I'll watch
Mm-mm.
I Love Lucy reruns all day long before I want to relive a lot
Exactly.
of what we went through. But we can't run from it. We have to tell the children the truth. And I want to be the one to do it. And it better be someone like me because
Yeah,
someone's going to tell the kids what it meant. They
that's
already
right.
have ideas about what it meant because there was so much fear out there and so much media out there. Don't kid yourselves that our little munchkins weren't picking up a lot more than they'll ever let on
It's true.
about what they went through.
Absolutely. And the institutionalized education systems, I'm sure, have picked many, many creative ways to propagandize what we went through, who the villains were, and who the saviors were in that. And it's not the same people you would pick.
Right, and just the stay safe, stay safe,
Yeah.
stay safe,
Yeah.
stay safe,
People still
stay
say
safe,
that. Like I
stay
called
safe.
Amex this week and they hung up, they said stay safe. I was like,
I would stop people and say, stay free,
yeah, I
stay
love that.
free, stay free. And but and then you see how they just roll another thing out to keep the population in a terrified state. It goes from when COVID was wearing thin, I guess, for a while there. Then the next thing you know, the Ukraine flag was on everything everywhere at all
Yeah.
times. And I went, you guys, once you see it, you can't unsee it, which is why we teach children through narrative and through symbolism, because then they can start to grasp how things work in a larger way, and it's useful. And so, Danielle,
Hmm.
you do realize I am the Mary Poppins for the 21st century.
I love
I
that.
am the red-pilled Mary Poppins.
You are so red-pilled.
Because if Mary Poppins flew into the 21st century and took that red pill from the Matrix movie where the guy wakes up
Hmm.
and realizes, oh my gosh, it sucks. Like, yeah, this really is bad news. She, she would, and I better do something about it. There's a
Hmm.
way out, but it's really bad and I can't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
If she took that red pill, she would use her spoonful of sugar to write these books. But since
That
she
is
wasn't
amazing.
available, I had to
Yeah.
do it.
filled in. Well, you're doing a great job. Julie, tell us about the fifth book, and then I have a couple questions that I want to get to as well.
I did. I told you
Oh,
it's
that
called
was the fifth.
That's
Okay,
the
that was the
Backlash
dog one.
Boomerang, right? But
Okay,
then I'm rewriting something right now that will be book 6, and
okay,
I've already pretty much done book 7. So I'm well on the way, and by the time I get through to book 10, I will have taken on the biggest, most compelling issues of our time, all various forms of very difficult childhood abuse to deal with. But always I write books so that I'll never violate your child's innocence or doom them out, because um, I write in a way that if your kid doesn't get what I'm talking about, they'll still enjoy the story and they'll pick up truth along the way. But if your child is old enough to see, huh, wow, that reminds me exactly of what I heard about my friend in junior high just did or went through or happened to them, or I heard on the news or the radio. They'll be able to go, oh, that helps me make sense of the world. And so that's my goal. Because, wonder, and then I'll unpack what is wonder? What is the realm of wonder? Who's behind it? How does it work? Well, you have to get to book 10 before I give that away.
okay. Save the best for last. That's awesome. Speaking of wonder, how you're working with a lot of tension here because there's some things that are so marvelous, and wonder is so ethereal and beyond and colorful and hopeful, and then you're dealing with some really tough real issues. How do you keep the tension? How do you, even as you're walking through life, that's just the reality of how we are having to deal with day-to-day life. How do you keep your wonder and imagination active while grappling with these topics?
Mm. Um, well, I think uh, kids are a big deal. You got to hang out with kids, you
Mm,
know? And and my family and I have a very childlike way of our humor is we're always goofing around. We're very goofy. And so for me, uh, laughter and humor and seeing the silliness and dumb puns and stuff like that have always been a huge, huge coping mechanism for us. And so we will always find a way to laugh in almost any situation. We can find the ridiculous. And so I would say that's probably one of the number one things that I learned to do, and we've learned to do together, because it really does break a lot of stuff off of you when you laugh.
it does. There's something spiritual about laughter because I can't tell you the number of times in the last 5 years that the idea of you have to laugh or else you'll cry just comes up, and and thankfully I'm surrounded by family who view life the same way, and you do have to make the best of terrible situations, and thankfully God's given us a sense of humor.
Yeah, and I really do think we win.
Yeah,
He's every
yeah,
Jesus leads us in triumphal procession. That literally means everywhere I go to win.
yeah.
I didn't come to your meeting to lose. I didn't get out of bed to lose.
I love that.
And I didn't come up with that. It was a guy named Curry Blake. But the idea that whatever situation I walk into, I didn't get here. I'm not here to lose. Not because I'm so great, but because he's so great. I'm with him.
Yeah.
We don't lose. So I may do an Obi-Wan, where I bend over and go, "Yeah, I'll bow out now. I might give you. I don't need to duke it out with you, but I win." I mean, when you think about it, you can humility. You win when you're humble. You
Yeah.
win when you're kind. You win when you're loving. You win when you forgive. You win, when you move out of the way for other people. And so when you see the irony of how scratching for control, power, and and dominance actually is a great way to lose.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. It's like when you um, in book 5, when I take on the world orderers ordering for them, you know, I I can't help but some of the things that Klaus Schwab said. So very happy. You will eat nothing. You will all nothing going to be happy. I mean, like what a wacko. You just kind of so and one of the best things in overcoming fear is learning to laugh at yourself and your fears because they're so fear is such a small way to live,
Yeah,
you know.
it is. And I mean, you've talked about it, but it's so limiting. Not just, it's limiting of the world that you allow yourself to live in. It's not just limiting of your, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but hopefully, hopefully you get it'll
Well,
scoot through
here's
the
another
airwaves.
tip from Julie's Handbook of Fear-Free Living. Fear never just says, uh, I'll take East Germany, you take West Germany, and we'll
Right.
leave it there. No, there's no line. We think, we think, okay, if I just avoid that one thing that really scares me,
Yeah.
and I'll keep the rest of my life and just avoid dealing with that one thing. We're sadly mistaken if we think the spirit of fear just stays on that side of the demilitarized zone. It never does. Fear constantly encroaches. Fear's constantly taking another bite. So if you give it one area of your life and you say, well, I'll do everything else, but I'll just never confront my alcoholic dad, or whatever it is, you've
Yeah.
decided your carve out. Trust me, it doesn't work that way.
And I
It
know
will,
what,
like you said, it will make your world smaller and smaller.
and it doesn't, this was the point I lost halfway through the airwaves was it doesn't just make your world smaller, it makes you smaller. You just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller until the purpose that you have to give the world is not visible to anyone.
Right. And trust me, I mean, I was such a fearful person. The word that described my life was fear in
Wow.
every way and I had all kinds of them. Weird ones, big ones, little ones, you know, anxiety, depression, this, that, panic, a little panic on the side. I had them all. Self-hatred, I mean, a little fear that I wasn't enough and fear that God hated me. And, just pick one. I had them
Yeah.
all.
Wow.
And you really can get better. It's true. Don't let the enemy lie to you about how it works. He doesn't, I mean, it's not, you gotta be willing to walk it out. But I remember when the Lord told me, he said, it's time. You got to deal with this one. And I was like, "Ugh, no, you're kidding me, but everybody just loves me the way I am. And I'm so
The scaredy cat
successful.
over here.
I'm so successful doing so many other things. You've got to be
Uh-huh.
kidding. Aren't you sure you need me teaching Sunday school? Instead of, doing whatever it is, aren't you sure you need me doing this other really important thing? You know? And he's like, nope, I really don't. And I said, well, okay. I've learned enough about who you are that I will follow you one step at a time. You take my hand. The answer is yes. And I'm just going to trust you. We're going to do this together and we're going to do it in, you know, doable bites. And he's so good that way. He really
Yeah.
is.
He is so good that way. And I'm glad that we don't really get to know the step number 3 because it's too much. It can be too much.
I know. Now, I do have one fear that I'm going to give into right now. The fear that your people won't know how to buy my books.
Yes. I'll put it
So
up
I
front.
must tell them how to buy it. Because you see, there's no other way to get them except for at this website right here. I just did not want to, first of all, um, Amazon doesn't pay authors very much, and I just didn't want to get canceled. I just didn't. Plus, their print to order things cannot compete with the quality of what we're putting out. And I've curated this whole I've curated the layout, the design, the stories, the work, brought in the editors, found the illustrator, worked with her, put the whole thing together, the concept. I mean, it's really a VIP deal. And so if you want to get my books, you have to get them there. But I'll tell you what, to make it easier to go through the friction of a new website, if you
Mm-hmm.
go to thequestforwonder.com, you get book one for free
There you go.
with a free audiobook bonus.
Awesome.
Just if you just pay me for shipping and handling. And then, but you have to stay on the site and get books two and three because that's where you get all this juicy, good stuff that we've all been through. Book one is super fun and exciting and people love it. But what I'm hearing now from people who got the first three is I love book two and I love book three. And it's really there by the book three is really, really getting to the jugular of all of all we've been through, of the depth of what we've faced and how to talk to kids about it. But each book lays an important piece in that process, right?
Yeah.
So, and I have study guides so that if you want to use this in a homeschool or a different kind of learning environment or you want to just have those on hand, those are digitally delivered. The books are physical copies. But you can have these study guides to be able to talk to your kids about. And I have some bonuses and stuff, but you got to go to thequestforwonder.com to get them. And I'm trusting that people will help me make it possible to get books four and five printed faster than I had anticipated. Because now that others are finished with book three, they're really bugging me about those other books now.
Yeah, they are. They are. I heard that when I was doing a little research. People are chomping at the bit. And I'll put this in the show notes, Julie, and I'll also put it up on our website so people can have access to it if they're coming to it a little bit late. A question for you. I mean, these are tough topics. Any advice for parents who are trying to deal with talking to their kids about tough topics?
Well, I think, first of all, you want them to have great literature, and you can talk about really so many things with great books. And there's some good ones. The Green Ember series is very good, and a lot of classic literature. The postmodern stuff that's made its way into the libraries and the bookshelves of kids recently is a
Mm-mm.
complete and total waste.
Yeah.
The woke stuff is but but classic fairy tales, classic literature. This is why you want to read with your kids. This is why if you get my books, you're getting these free audiobooks. You can get them. You get free audiobooks for two and three too if you buy those, and so you can listen in the car and talk about it. And this is the kind of experience. As an example, obviously my books are the best, but if you want to have these experiences with your kids so you can listen to great literature together and then begin to talk about the characters and sit down and say, have you ever felt like that? Did you ever you been through anything like that? What do you think? Does this and then it takes it off of it's not so heavy-handed, right?
Yeah.
But look, our kids are, they're just looking for an excuse to pick us over everybody else out there. And I think this is the deal parents don't realize is that if you're not careful and you don't maintain supremacy in the of being the central and most important people in your kid's life, it can be taken from you very easily when you drop them off 6, 7 hours a day and pick them up and then drop them off to 2 hours more of activities. And so one
Well
of the
said.
biggest, and people don't realize how quickly they lose their children in establishment education systems because they have to survive. They're not
Yeah.
stupid. They
Yeah.
realize you're not there. So you want to be there as much as possible for the conversations and um, and you want to have as much family building time and do less, do less, do
Yeah.
less stuff, less running around. You can, the interesting thing about it homeschooling is you can get your schoolwork done in a few hours a day, and the rest of the day you can do all kinds of other things like start a business or teach your kid how to do laundry. Yay! That's just
Which
an
could be
op.
its own business.
Yeah, but we keep thinking we got to do more. I think we need to do less. And I think laughing, laugh, lots of fun. And look, who wants to be around us if we're like bummed out all the time. So we want to keep a joy factor there and read good books with your kids.
Last question for you. What is your dream for the children who read your book?
That they'll help me make movies.
Awesome.
Why
These are
not?
these are screaming to have movies made about them.
They're screaming at me. I'll tell you.
Awesome. Well, I'm prayerful that we will see that day very soon.
Thank you. I received that. Yes, may it be so.
Yeah. Well, Julie, thank you so much for taking some time with me today. You are such a gift. Thank you for putting your heart and soul into this and giving parents some tools that are much needed to really walk through some of the lessons we've learned and some of the tough experiences we've had over the last couple of years, and also a new way to see the world.
Well, thank you. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. Have a great night, Julie.
I will. You can count on it.
All right.
You
God
too.
bless. Thank you. The State of Freedom is proud to partner with 3 fantastic companies. The first one, Legal Shield, gives you 24/7 access to an attorney at a great low monthly rate, and they can help you on a wide range of issues from drafting a will to reviewing contracts or legislation and monitoring your identity. Everyone I've talked to at the company has been professional, friendly, and super helpful. I've had a great experience. The second company is Partner Co., which is an amazing resource for homeopathic and all-natural wellness products that address everything from weight loss to improving energy, immunity boosting, detoxification, and more. I'm taking several products right now, but my favorite one is called Tahitian Noni Juice. It gives me great energy and a good mood boost every single day, and since I started drinking it, I have not missed a single day. The third company is Metal Stacks. They are our go-to source for physical precious metals and IRA conversions into precious metals. I converted my Fidelity 401k into a precious metals IRA with them using their white glove service, and it was a very approachable and easy to manage process with the same real humans who helped me all along the way. I can't say enough about it. So if you are in the market for any of these, or if I've piqued your interest, I encourage you to visit freedomstate.us and shop with our fantastic trusted partners. You can also drop me a line if you have any questions at danielle@freedomstate.us. Thank you for joining me today on For the Love of Freedom. I hope you were inspired by my guest and their mission to bring freedom to the world. You can stay updated on the show and my upcoming guests on all of the State of Freedom platforms, and a reminder that I'm live every Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Central.